o'clock. So I will call this meeting to order. The chair knows there's a quorum present, and let's do the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was going to mention something about my shoe. It's spectacular today.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, 2.0, additions, revisions to the agenda. We had a late request come in from Special Transportation for her to be able to submit a grant application. This is kind of a cool thing for her to be able to add some new technology so that the drivers can log their trips electronically, which would be huge administratively for us if they got that. Really sort of streamline some of the paperwork in transportation. So I would like to add that as 4.7 under the consent agenda, which would be consider approval of special transportation grant submittal request. There's no objections to that. And then the other thing is 6.2. We are still waiting to hear back from Hood River County on that agreement, and so I'm going to go ahead and pull that, and we'll put it back on once we hear back from them that they're okay with those with that agreement. Any other additions or revisions?
I don't have any.
No. Okay. Let's move into 3.0, correspondence and public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair, give your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes. Any public comments? No public comments. Okay. And we don't have any correspondence today either, and so we'll move on to 4.0, the consent agenda.
Okay. I move we approve the consent agenda. A second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of January 8th regular meeting minutes, consider approval of January 8th work session minutes, consider approval of January 15th special meeting minutes, consider approval of intergovernmental agreement with Lane County for Ascend Proval software support, consider approval of amended transportation vehicle use agreement with Coos County, consider appointment of Sally Mann to the Gilliam County Local Community Advisory Council, LCAC, and then consider approval of special transportation grant submittal request. Is there further discussion?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let me catch up here. Move into unfinished business. This is consider approval of resolution number R 2020-03, a resolution declaring a transportation vehicle as surplus. So as you recall, this was on our last agenda, and we had questions about being able to donate it. So here's the latest. I went back to Marla. Marla gave me ODOT guidance, since this is an ODOT grant, and their guidance for disposing of vehicles that were purchased with grant dollars is that it does need to go through a surplus auction. And so that's why it's coming back and looking awfully familiar. And why I didn't change anything. I didn't want you guys to think that I was overruling you, but that's why we're bringing it back, is that was their advice. And then I think likely if we did not receive bids for it, then we could go back to ODOT and say, hey, can we donate it? Because we've tried to auction it off and nobody wanted it. So then the question becomes, I still left it as using the online surplus. One of the things that somebody raised with me actually after we had this discussion was, I know there's an interest in having it locally sold. Some of the feedback though is the way that we do it with a sealed bid is that our local folks don't always know who else is bidding, how much the cost is, and so one of the advantages of putting it online is it's a real-time bid. So if somebody really wants the vehicle, they can continue to bid on it and know how much it's going to cost them. And if somebody decides that, it's too rich for my blood, they can step out, and not, so it's...
I didn't realize that because I haven't looked at their
it's more like a
website, but I didn't realize it was
It's a real-time bid, so.
You know what other people are bidding.
Yeah, so that would allow, and so my suggestion would be that we move forward with allowing it, and then that we just have Teresa put in a notice in the paper that if people want to bid on it, they go here. And then that way they can, people can in real time see how much it costs and decide whether they want to pay that price, so.
Now, my other question at that time, in the last meeting, and is still again, the money goes into the general fund then? ODOT doesn't tell us what we have to do with the money? They tell us how we have to get the bid process, but not what we have to do.
The ODOT guidelines, and we'll have to double check that Nathan is doing this, say that it actually should go back into the transportation department and should be used either for maintenance or for purchasing of new vehicles.
Okay.
So we'll just need to make sure that that's happening internally as our process, but that was their guidance.
Super. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number R 2020-03, declaring the 2010 Scion XB as surplus equipment and directing the vehicle be disposed of via online public auction, auction at publicsurplus.com with a minimum bid of $3,000. I need to work on it.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number R 2020-03, declaring the 2010 Scion XB as surplus equipment and directing the vehicle to be disposed of via online public auction at publicsurplus.com with a minimum bid of $3,000.
That's easy.
You already broke through the first time. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, let's go on to 6.1, consider approval of death investigator position description and salary schedule. This is Lisa's baby, but I can give you sort of the overview and then she can answer questions that you have. So basically, one of our employees in the DA's office who already has training to do death investigations was doing so on a voluntary basis, kind of filling in when we needed somebody. And so because of the new pay equity law, originally that was volunteer, we have our deputies and things that also do that, and we pay them for that. And because they are by and large male, she is a female, and also she asked us to take a look at having a job description, things like that. So we are pursuing putting that together and sort of making sure that we're compensating her for her time. Lisa, do you want to add?
That pretty much shapes it up. So we also put it out to market pricing, and that's based on Oregon market pricing, so that it's equitable with what's happening across the state, with some slight adjustment for the uniqueness of our county. If you have any other questions specifically?
How many hours a week does this employee currently
It's
work?
not even hours a week.
Going
so-
in her other job. In her
she's
regular.
at 0.71 FTE at the moment. So at maximum, this might, on the occasions that she needs to support the work of death investigations, take her up to a full-time FTE, but highly unlikely.
So from a payroll aspect, so does our clerk pay her a certain amount for this, and then if she ends up doing a couple hours of in this role, does she get paid a different amount?
So it is rate specific depending on what's been negotiated for the different hats that she wears, and it comes out of different budget line items as well. So we've built that into the process to make it pretty streamlined so that it doesn't cause the county clerk too much money.
She has a separate timesheet that Lisa developed for her.
And this is infrequent.
Very. So
yeah.
for example, last year she had 2 occasions to support this work, because often the deputies are doing the work as well, but sometimes that's just not possible, and this gives the sheriff the flexibility that he needs to get the work done.
We did run it by Marion. He was okay with it. Gary took a look at it as well. Had some adjustments that he wanted to make to the position description, and those were made. So I think he's good.
And that's in our, those changes are what we received in our packet.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes, that was just the couple of minor details of word per minute typing, which really is not an issue.
Oh, right,
It's just an
right.
online form that the DA would be required to complete, so being able to do 55 words per minute is not necessary. And then equally, going through an entire physical for maybe 5 hours a year seemed excessive and not cost effective to the county.
Okay.
And how does this, how does the union, how do they just approve this change, do they have anything to do, I mean, how does that work?
No, because this position in particular wouldn't, by itself, wouldn't be a union position. So
Is she currently union in her
she
other-
is union. But I think it's okay because she's taking on 2 separate roles, one which is a union role, one which is not. And the union pieces of it don't change.
I think also we need to view this position description not specific to a person, because it could be at any time the sheriff's at liberty to utilize the services of somebody who meets the criteria of this position, who may or may not already be a current county employee.
It could also not even reside in our county,
Exactly.
Yeah.
depending on what's happening.
Questions? Any more questions?
Yes, I'm thinking. Okay, yeah, if this would have been, you know, you can throw out hypotheticals, but I just want to make sure I understand completely. How would this work if this was like a 40-hour a week per employee of the county, and then they wanted to take on something like this in addition to their program? Yeah, I mean, is it just working out well because she happens to be a .71 rather than someone that's?
Yeah, I mean, if we had somebody who was, I think we'd have to just take it case by case. So we'd have to explore what that does on her side. But really, we're talking about not a lot of hours. So even with somebody who was 40, what we'd be talking about basically is someone who may use that as overtime.
Or they have flex, possibly.
Or they could potentially flex for those, because we're really, thankfully, we don't have a lot of mysterious deaths in the county.
Yes, if we're going to full-time, we have a population crisis. But we're talking a maximum of 5 hours a year, based on historical data.
Because typically the deputies.
The deputies handle it as
And
part of
they
their.
are all, I'm assuming, over this wage?
They are.
They are,
Be-
absolutely.
Because of their other duties.
They have other duties, they're also on duty as a deputy at the time they're conducting this particular skill set. They have all their other skill sets and certifications and things in play too. So it's reasonable that they have a different pay scale for that role because they're doing so much more at the same time as well, applying their deputy duties.
Okay. Well, I move we adopt the position description and salary scale for the position of death investigator, I'm sure we'll be able to, as presented.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the position description and salary scale for the position of death investigator as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so skipping the one with Hood River County. So we'll move into consider approval of amendment to medical examiner agreement with North Central Public Health. So this is sort of the 1-2 punch. Basically, North Central Public Health informed us that our principal medical examiner in the region, which was Dr. Miriam McDonald, had wanted to step back from being sort of the principal medical examiner. So Hood River's medical examiner, which is a guy by the name of Dr. Christopher Van Tilburg, has agreed to fulfill those duties in her place, and then Dr. McDonald will be sort of the backup to him. And so my hope was that we would have had both agreements ready to go. We only have the North Central Public Health one ready, but I think it's okay to go forward with it, and at least have the backup agreement in place, and then we'll get the Hood River one back on as soon as they get back to us. So this is basically the same agreement that we had with North Central Public Health with 2 amendments. The first one that Dr. McDonald is the backup instead of the principal, and the second adjusting her hourly rate from $80 to $100. And then, so you guys know, this comes out of a line item that we have that's separate, that's medical investigations that we put, I think it has $4 to $5 grand in it, and we never fully expend that money. So I'm not concerned about the extra jump depleting that. We've got plenty in that line item. Thankfully, again, because we don't have a lot of unexplained or deaths that need medical investigation, so, or examiners. Questions about this one?
No, I think she's pretty happy though to give this role
Yeah.
and somebody else that wants to do it.
I move to approve the amendment to medical examiner services agreement with North Central Public Health District as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amendment to the medical examiner services agreement with North Central Public Health District as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Moving right along. 6.4, consider approval of resolution number R 2020-06, a resolution establishing the fiscal year 2020-2021 Special Projects Grant Program. So this is similar to the last 2 sessions where we've done the other 2 grant programs. And basically, the only changes that were made in this one was just clarifying that question that Shannon Kopic had asked us about requests versus total project costs. And so you'll see in here on page 2, it says under allowable grant fund usage, it says capital project requests of 20,000 or less, just to clarify that. And other than that, I don't think I changed anything but updating the deadline. And the obviously the numbering, the 2020, 2021. But other than that, it's the same as what we saw during the last work session.
I move to adopt resolution number R 2020-06 and establish the fiscal year 2020-2021 Special Projects Grant Program guidelines as presented.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number R 2020-06 and establish the fiscal year 2020-2021 Special Projects Grant Program guidelines as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We're zipping right along, ladies. That consent agenda. Okay, last one under new business is discuss the red zone designation request. So I basically just wanted to bring this back up to get some guidance from the county court as sort of to refresh us and people who are watching from home. Back in October, we held a work session with Art Fish from Business Oregon, and Brian Walsh from Avangrid was there. Some of our internal staff was here to learn about red zones, which are rural renewable energy development zones. They basically provide a tax break for energy companies investing in our county for 3 to 5 years, depending on how it's structured. And that original work session was held in response to a request from Avangrid Renewables, primarily because I think their Montague 2 project is contemplating a solar component. And so I think they're looking for, obviously, any opportunity to reduce their costs, and which makes sense, obviously, from their business perspective. So what I'm looking for is some guidance on whether this is something as a court that we want to continue to devote resources to pursuing and investigating, or whether we want to prioritize other things. I will say that I've been doing some research, talked to some of our county, our neighboring counties. Sherman County has a red zone, and so I asked Joe about, or Judge DeBolskas, about why they have it, how long, has anybody invested? He said it originally came from a request from, I think, Avangrid, and the argument at the time is that, neighbors would have it and they needed to be competitive, all the same thing that we heard during our work session. I asked whether anybody has used that for any of their projects since they've had it, and he said no. Their original thought was bringing a project, if it entices a project in, that's overall better for the county. But at least at this point, it doesn't appear that incentive has actually increased investment in projects in Sherman County.
Do we know how long we've had a red zone?
I would need to go back and check for sure, but I do know that theirs expired and they had to renew it, and so they've had it for a while, more than just recently, kind of thing.
And they're not beating down the door.
They're not beating down the door. I also, when I was down at AOC, I saw the Morrow County Commissioners. They do not have a red zone, and so I asked them, why, what's going on there. And I spoke with Commissioner Russell, actually, and he said that they had talked about it before the new county commissioners, so before Melissa and Jim were on the commission. And at the time, they just didn't see the need for it because there are wind SIPs and solar SIPs and other incentives for solar development. They didn't feel at the time that it was needed, and they've had quite a bit more solar development than we have, and then Sherman County has. So I asked them, has this ever been raised by a developer as an obstacle? And he said they've never had that kind of pushback, that developers were coming in and saying, we would develop here, but you don't have a red zone. So I didn't get the impression that that was a stumbling block for investment in Morrow County. And then I also spoke with Lake County, because they have quite a bit of solar development there as well, and they also do not have, they have a different tax incentive down there. It's not a red zone though. They also cited the SIP that are designed just for solar as their primary development tool. So,
Did we ever find out, I'm sorry to interrupt, but sometimes these questions fall apart.
yeah, go ahead.
Did Chet ever find out, did we ever find out if our current SIP could be amended for the solar?
We have not looked at that. We have discussed internally maybe sending all of our SIPs to an energy attorney to review them and just make sure that everything, because there's some, Kelly, the treasurer's office was looking at one and was even questioning whether we're charging the right amount. And so they had raised the idea of maybe us looking at an energy attorney that could just do a review of those and give
Come up
us.
with a summary, just a quick,
Yeah.
whole pager.
Here's what you need to know. So if that's something that we're interested in, I may just start pursuing and see if we can find an energy attorney that could look through those for us. Just kind of a one-off, here's what the SIP, and at the same time, they could look at that specific one with Avangrid and give us some feedback on whether this covers the solar component or whether, because if it covers the solar component, it's really, I think, a non-issue, right? Because we've already signed an agreement with Avangrid over that development. So if you guys are interested in that, I can look into the energy attorney piece of that and just get some good feedback. So anyway, all of this is by way, I think what I'm saying is, and where I'm feeling we should go with this is the counties that I've been talking to, the ones that haven't, don't appear to have necessarily seen additional investment from it, and the ones that don't seem to be slowing down on their investment. And so my feeling, at least at this point, is I'm not sure it's worth the court's time and the staff time to pull all of the taxing districts together, establish this over something that I'm not sure long run. I mean, maybe later down the road, if more of the energy companies are shifting to wind or to solar, maybe it's something down the road that we explore, but I'm not sure that this year.
Well, and Avangrid has never come back, so why aren't you doing something?
Well, they keep coming back and asking where we are on it, which is why I wanted some direction from us, because I think they're still trying to market their Montague 2 project. I'm also not convinced that it will change their business decision.
Right.
You know, I mean, I
Because
feel.
they're already here, why are they?
Yeah, and they've gone through the
Okay,
FSEC
stop.
process, which has been a 10-year process of getting that approved. Seems like a lot of investment to walk away from,
Just because we don't have a.
just because we don't have a red zone. As particularly because we don't even know, it may already be covered under the SIP anyway.
Yeah, I think pursuing, what does our SIP actually say and where that takes us and put the red zone on.
Okay. Okay. That's all I needed, was some direction on what resources you wanted me to expend where. So,
So do it and having us understand what the SIP says and what it covers.
it seems like that would be the priority, is to get to the bottom of what the SIP
What we already
actually
have.
covers first, and then, yeah. Okay. With that, we are already to court reports. Flying through. Leslie?
And mine's gonna be big.
Oh my gosh, I'm not sure I did anything. Does
I
that
just had a
sound
meeting.
terrible?
I just had a meeting. I just had one. I went to, oh yeah, because Port, you probably read about Port.
I was.
Canceled for weather, right?
Oh, no, I wasn't because it was here, but.
Oh, okay. Okay, I went to the North Central Public Health District meeting on January 14th. And there was a few big items of conversation. One of the main topics was recruitment and hiring for the director position. And we had a pretty good conversation about how does that look? How are we gonna go about it? Because Terry, I think, retires as of June 30th. So they kind of came up with about 3 different alternatives for how we could go about replacing her. One of them was, they talked about the Center for Living just recently had to go through this process as well, and they spent about $35,000 to hire a recruitment service. So that's always enough. The other thing, but the North Central Public Health District budget doesn't really have a lot of extra money laying around or something like that, so I think that money would have to come from the individual counties if we decide that that's the route we want to take. Another couple alternatives they talked about was possibly talking to each county and finding out if one of the counties want to step up and say, oh, we'll take that on. And I said, I will ask, it's hard to ask, but I also said that, we have a brand new chief of staff and we have a lot of our own issues that are going on currently. And I wasn't about to volunteer you for anything. But I said I would ask, and then the third alternative, of course, is let the North Central Public Health District staff handle the recruitment. And it may, from what I'm hearing, Terry kind of mentioned that she wasn't going to find her own replacement. And that Gloria, who does the recruiting, doesn't have the capacity. But I was kind of feeling possibly from the other board members that, maybe let's give it a try and see what they can do. You can always start off by saying, let's, go ahead and let the public health staff take a stab at it and see what kind of response we get. That's pretty much where we left it. And they talked about going back to their counties and seeing, and I'm wondering if Wasco County might play a bigger role. And, Now, maybe we can help, we can assist, but I don't know that our county wants to just take it on and say we'll handle it.
Yeah.
And that's, let's see, what else we did. Oh, we hired a nurse, finally got a nurse, which was, kind of, I think a lot of the response we got was that we don't pay her, we didn't pay her. And so we didn't have a whole lot of, we had interested people, but once they found out what pay was, they weren't interested anymore. But we have hired a nurse, and I believe it was someone that kind of wanted to come back to the area.
Great.
I also, Terry, I talked to her and I said, at the meeting, I said, Gilliam County would like you to come talk to us about what your budget request may look like this year. So she's willing whenever we want to set that up. Possibly the budget committee meets.
That's what I'm thinking, just so that the budget committee can hear her pitch too at the same time. When we do that, I think it's the 8th, the second week, and when we have the departments come in, I think.
She's willing, we can always have her come in multiple times if we
Yeah.
want, and she would talk to us, but
Yeah.
that's what she's saying.
I'm thinking for sure the budget committee,
So too.
yeah,
Since they'll have to ultimately approve
decide,
any
exactly.
increase. So how do we, what do I do as far as, I can just tell her okay, we meet on April 8th, and does she coordinate, who does she coordinate?
I just coordinate with Nathan, because he'll do the department schedules that morning, and so he can just find her a slot, and get her in the schedule for that morning.
Okay, I can let her know that. And I think that was the gist. We always talk about little things just in public health, but that was the main, for that meeting was the main. We have to pick a chair, we have to pick a new chair,
And you have a new member coming
and we
on,
have a new member,
Commissioner
Scott.
Schwartz.
Commissioner Scott Hagee is on his way out, and we have a new one, Commissioner Schwartz is coming on. Hopefully she's interested in taking the chair position. I think Jody and I are.
She's got a lot of passion for it,
Bird and I are
so
hoping that she'll want to
Yeah.
take that
she used to
on.
run
Well,
it.
again,
She used to run it, so would be a good fit.
Very qualified.
Yeah, right. That would be how I would convince
See if we
her.
can talk her into that. Well, and also she's Wasco County, and they're
Right.
66% of the budget, you're 17, and you're right there. So all the little dealings that the director has to have with being the chair of the board,
Oh, it's much easier
right
right
there.
Yeah.
And that's all I have.
All right, Sherry.
Oh, wait, no.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
No, you're done. No.
I know, I said I'm done. I need to check my notes a little bit better. I was just kind of winging it. Well, at least they're near. There was, look at my notebook. Let's see. There was, I guess there was kind of an uproar yesterday at Waste Management.
Oh, really?
People were a little bit, there was an uproar, let's say that's the word for it. Because
Okay.
there was the night before, there was a 50-minute delay at the crossing.
Train again.
So I was wondering, did we get any calls?
I did not.
And I didn't get
Because
any calls.
people were asking me for the phone number. And the other thing is the response that they're getting from management is that, oh, and we're still working with the county on the yellow delineators, and once those are in, it'll get better. And I just wonder why they keep telling, if they're trying to act, well, I would hate for all the waste management employees to think this is something that's in the county court, ball court, it's something that we're delaying, that we're not taking care of, that we're delaying. We haven't done
I'm going to speak to
anything.
that in my report.
Because I think what they're saying is that, oh yeah, as soon as we get the delineators up, it'll be much better, which nobody really understands that either. How is that gonna help with them breaking the trade and keeping that road clear? But yeah, I heard that a lot of the employees were upset about another big delay, and then management is telling them that I don't know if they're telling them they're waiting on the county court, but they're working with the county. And from my discussions with you both, I didn't really feel that we were wanting to pursue that.
Have you talked to Dewey about the
Well, because we
Not
talked.
recently.
delineator? Because he
talked
said
about it a
no.
long time ago, and he's not interested.
Yeah.
Okay,
So last
well, I
time-
have updates for
The
you.
last time we talked about it was in an open session here. I think was the last time we all spoke about it. And at the time, Dewey had said he wasn't interested, so.
Well, and I didn't make it to the last citizens advisory meeting. For personal reasons, but.
I would hope that it's not, that all the employees in the county courts dragging our feet, or we're not doing anything.
So I can answer some of these questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
John Borghese is in Waste Management, again, working for Waste Management out of the Seattle office with transportation. But Dave Lowe has asked him to take on a more active role in what's happening at Columbia Ridge. So he has been reaching out to me, and we've had some discussions about, we were talking about the Norcore contract for the paper picking, and so I did talk to the judge about what that looked like this morning, because I needed some history and some actual clarification of what the issues were there. And I was going to call John back when, well, behold, my phone rang, and it was Mr. Borghese. And we did have that discussion this morning, because he was told by Waste Management, Columbia Ridge Management, that Dewey Kennedy, as the roadmaster, was working with Watco, the short line crew, and that they were in negotiations to put in the delineator. And I told Mr. Borghese that I didn't believe that was true, that my understanding from Mr. Kennedy was that he was not any more in favor of it than the county court was, because of the restrictions it would cause for snow removal and for farm equipment. So Mr. Borghese is going to make contact with Mr. Kennedy and with Mr. Goss with the Watco Short Line crew and find out what's going on. Now, I have not spoken to Michael Goss, but I am working with Mr. Borghese on the issue. He did not mention to me this morning that there was a problem with the crossing yesterday. So apparently the Waste Management employees did not know that maybe Mr. Borghese was someone that needed to know that happened. But I will call him back when our meeting's over and tell him that there was an issue yesterday that the employees were concerned about, so that he's aware of what's going on. So he is our new contact, as opposed to Dave Lowe or Alan Anderson. So
Good to know.
John and I've been talking. He called me last week, and we've spoken several times. So.
Great. Glad that he's engaging. That's
Well, and
wonderful.
his background was Columbia Ridge originally, with the rail. So that's how he got his start. And got started with Waste Management. Yes. He knows how it all works a lot, maybe a little more than some of the other local management. He did go to Utah for a couple of years on speculating a new landfill over there. He was hired away from Waste Management to help with that development, and it permitting fell through, and so he left. And they took him back open arms. So they were quite happy to have him back. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay.
Good.
So I will continue to communicate with John. And so if you have any issues, let me know, and John and I'll see if we can.
I can't believe we didn't get calls though, because from what I was hearing, they asked for the number and they were gonna call and who do we talk to? And
Oh, they wanted to call
They wanted to call Courthouse.
Courthouse. And it's because they were led to believe that we were the ones holding, that we were the reason why they were still getting held up.
I'm guessing, yeah, that was what they must
Yeah, we
have
didn't.
They must have been.
And then I want to say whatever, so blink my eyes. I have a Norcore meeting tomorrow, and it's just basic, nothing specific. We'll be working on the budget calendar and all the things everybody does in the first part of the year, and staffing updates and what's going on. So it'll be just a pretty basic what's happening in Norcore meeting. And And what else do I have? Lots of stuff that isn't county stuff here on my calendar. Next Wednesday is Tri-County and Frontier Telenet in Sherman County. I'll be attending that. And that's where I'm at right now.
All right, I've got a few things. So wanted to let you guys know that in Korea, which is funded, there's a portion of our SIPs that go to Korea. And we have started having some discussions internally about the direction of that entity because I kind of stirred the hornet's nest, but then the other counties jumped in with me. I basically was questioning the value proposition for the county because we provide right now a little over $90,000 a year to them. When the next SIP rolls on next year, that number will be closer to 120. And so I was asking the question, what do we get in return for that investment? And the executive director and the board had a really hard time identifying what that was. And so I raised that concern, and the other counties who are also SIP counties, they give considerably less than we do. Sherman County gives, I think, $19,000, and Morrow County's like a 21.
And we're currently getting 90?
Yep, because of the number of SIPs that we currently have and what was negotiated in them. And so we are definitely the main funder of the entity. And so there was a lot of initial pushback from the industry folks and the executive director until the other counties kind of joined in the chorus and said, yeah, what about the amount that we're contributing? So we're starting to shift Korea's focus a little bit into, there was actually a really good presentation when we were at AOC about a project Hood River did about basically resiliency in the energy grid. So if you have a shutdown because of fire or something else, a lot of companies now are starting to shut down during peak fire season, making sure that you've got microgrids within communities for critical infrastructure. So if you've got like senior centers that need to be kept at a certain, how do you create internally structures that are resilient when things like that happen? If we have a natural disaster, if the big earthquake hits, things like that.
We talk about that a lot in our public health.
Yeah, so they're starting to shift a little bit more.
Would you define Korea for those that are watching that may not know what Korea is?
So Korea, the acronym is a Community Renewable Energy Association. And historically, their focus was more on creating a regulatory landscape for very small, primarily solar development, which of course we have no solar here, and our energy development is large scale. And so years and years ago when they were putting this together, they wrote into our SIP agreements that a portion of the SIP monies would go into Korea. So it's not something that we actively decide every year we're going to be a member of. We're a member by default from contracts that were signed years before we came into office. So that's kind of the history of it. The other thing that we have started asking, that I raised during our last planning session, and the other counties jumped on, was the uncertainty that all of the SIP counties have, not just us three, but any SIP counties, on how the state will treat our assets after the SIPs roll off, and getting some clarity from Department of Revenue on how they'll make those assessments, and also perhaps exploring, my understanding is right now the industry can challenge central assessments if they feel that the state got it wrong. They can present additional evidence to say, hey, we think you're overvaluing this, or whatever. The counties don't have a way to challenge if we feel that the state is undervaluing assets that are within our borders. And so one of the things we started to talk about is there a mechanism where the counties could appeal Department of Revenue central assessments on particularly energy facilities that we feel the state is undervaluing and shorting us on property taxes. So I felt like this was a positive step, because if CREA could actually make some inroads on that, that might mean long-term that the county receives more property taxes off those investments, which may make our $120,000 investment next year worthwhile. So that's kind of the direction that CREA is going. I just wanted to kind of update you that we're trying to shift them off of where they were before and be more county focused rather than industry focused. And we'll see how that goes.
That would be my question. What advantage are they bringing to the county as an entity that we're funding to? What are they doing for us?
I was having a hard time identifying that, and it appears that some of our county partners have been having the same concerns for a while, and then when I spoke up, kind of broke a logjam in that frustration. So it came flooding out during the last
Good
meeting
job,
from the
nice
other
job.
counties. So anyway, that's kind of the update there, and I'll just keep you posted as they're starting to develop a new strategic plan. So as that rolls out, I'm happy to continue to update when we're here. The other thing is I was at AOC last week now? It was last week. Feels like it was weeks ago.
I hear you.
So I just wanted to update you on a few things that are sort of the hot topics and get your initial take on them so I know if I'm kind of on the right track. Obviously, the big thing is cap and trade again. It was a bill that was introduced. My initial sort of priorities, number one, is making sure that waste management is exempt from that or feels comfortable with whatever requirements the state's going to put on them. So that's sort of my initial thing that I want to focus on, is making sure. They were exempt last time, and I think we could find some allies in Portland that would, for Metro, that would also think that it's probably wise not to raise their own garbage rates in order to cover the cost of all of this. So, so that's the one piece. The other thing that we have been talking about, which is kind of where I've been trying to push AOC to be and the other counties to be, there's been sort of a rift between the eastern counties and the western counties. The eastern counties are basically saying AOC shouldn't even engage in discussions about this, that we should just say it's not acceptable and we're not participating. That was not the tack that I took. I basically said that I think we need to be at the table because AOC needs to try to protect us and head off the worst of what could be in that bill, and that if they're not at the table and actively engaging on it, that we don't have a say at all of what happens to us.
We need to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, we don't want to just pick up our blocks and, we're not gonna.
Right.
We're heading home.
Go
Yeah,
home.
we're taking our
Go home,
toys.
Yeah. Because if we end up with something that we didn't support because we weren't there to hear what was happening.
Exactly. The other shift that has been happening that I think where AOC could potentially find some middle ground, and I'm guessing that we'll be in support of this, is, and the governor actually made mention of this, she was talking at another conference I was at, she had talked about focusing on the western counties, specifically the I-5 counties that are most in favor of doing it, and frankly where most of the pollution comes from.
Right.
And so they are looking at basically requiring counties of a certain size and that have certain activities, like that sell a certain number of gallons of fuel, that would be automatically subject to it, which would basically kick the Eastern Oregon counties out of a lot of those provisions, and then allow counties to opt in. So if there's counties that want to proactively require these new things, The downside is if you don't opt in, it's the same as the marijuana tax. You don't receive any of the funds from it, basically. And so there may be some counties that are on the fence that could use the funds and end up opting in because they would like to put the tax funds, have those coming through. But that seemed to be a compromise that might actually be workable, is to say basically, make the polluters, the big polluters, the counties that have the most traffic, that have the most problems, and that are the most supportive, frankly, of the legislation, have them be subject to it. And the rest of us, leave us alone, basically, and allow us to decide on our own whether we want to opt in or not on some of these things. So that was kind of what I was pushing towards is,
Did you have any conversations with Commissioner Doherty or Commissioner Murdoch?
They seem to be more in the camp that I was in terms of AOC has to be at the table.
Good.
That
They
walking,
seem like that type of
yeah,
people.
because otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah, right, that's the
Honestly,
point.
if every time there's legislation that harms counties, and we say we're not participating because it harms counties, why even have a lobbyist there?
Right.
That's the whole point of having a lobbyist,
Got to fight for what we want.
is to protect us. Yeah.
If we aren't in the fight,
Then
then
what's
we're just
the point?
giving up. We're just waving the white flag. and
What's the
saying,
point?
Whatever you decide.
So, and I feel like that was sort of carried the day last time, but who knows where the bill is going to go. So anyway, that's sort of been my push, is to allow counties who are not the big metropolitan counties to opt in. And that might please both sides.
I read some of that too, which was what the governor was.
Yeah. So that was the big thing. There's a bunch of other smaller bills. I also heard, and I don't know if you've heard about this, is there a Norcor bill going through? I heard there's a legislative draft.
Well,
But I haven't seen it, and I don't know.
I don't
if
think it's
we're-
gotten to that point yet. We're
Okay.
still working towards, I think what the bill that they're looking at is something to help with, to help all the jail facilities, the small jail facilities with their capital.
Okay. So I'll just, it was actually Commissioner Kramer that had said, I think there's an Norcor bill going through. So I'll just plan on kind of tracking that.
I will, yeah.
And if there's something that I need to weigh in on, if you just let me know during the next meeting, that would be great.
Thinking there was a letter out there that didn't bring it up for packet, but yeah, there is a letter regarding what you're talking about.
Okay. Other than that, it's a short session. I don't know if you guys know this, but so the short session is a 35-day session. It'll open, I think February 3rd is officially the first day, although they're doing their legislative, I mean, they're in the building now. And they have deadlines of how quickly bills need to move. And so basically the first week of February, the end of it, a ton of bills will have died basically for lack of movement. And by the second week of February, we'll know kind of what the universe looks like, how many bills are still there that we need to pay attention to. And we'll also know whether cap and trade moved. The committee that they referred it to is one of the committees that's subject to those deadlines, which is interesting. If they had done a joint committee, it wouldn't have been subject to those deadlines. And so it's kind of a little puzzling that they put that deadline on themselves to do that. So anyway, all of that to say, there'll be more forthcoming, but that's really the big topic right now is that there is a push for restoring some of the community corrections funds that were removed from last year's budget. And so there's been a little bit of talk about that, and I don't know if that will gain any traction or not. But those were the two kind of main things that I thought were relevant to the county, to our county, after last week's meeting. So the last thing that I have is I am wondering, because of the plan that we passed, that DEQ requires of us for mitigating water temperature in the John Day River, and the fact that we basically assigned SWCD to do that on our behalf. I am wondering what the appetite would be for signing an IGA with the SWCD for those specific expectations that we have, since kind of our operating, the way we've operated here is if we have an IGA, that's stable funding for those purposes. I don't necessarily want to sign an IGA with everybody that we fund, but given that in this one in particular, we sort of handed off a DEQ requirement that we otherwise would have to fulfill to an agency, that maybe we attach what we normally provide to SWCD and funding to this IGA with the expectation that they implement our plan on our behalf.
What's our normal,
How much we give them? I think we give them around, it's less than 50, but more than 40, like 40 to 50,000, I think is what we give them.
That's right, yeah, that sounds right.
So I was wondering if we have an interest in pursuing an IGA and making them, basically paying them for that period of time to implement the total maximum daily load plan for the John Day.
So would that assist us in our requirements to DEQ? I mean, would that hold more weight than just say, we've asked this SWCD to take this on for us, and tell the DEQ we have an IGA with SWCD to make this happen?
Yeah, so
That would be for you.
because our plan definitely said that SWCD would implement it, and so to me, this is like step 2 of
Right,
saying,
right, yeah.
as in the plan, it says SWCD is doing it, and then to DEQ, we can say, and here's the agreement that says that in exchange for this contribution, SWCD will do these things, and really have the IGA mirror the action steps that were in the plan that we submitted to DEQ.
I'm just trying to refresh my memory about what the plan looked like. Is there, now that the plan is, we have the TMDL plan, is there a lot more work that needs to be done? Or is it, okay, you got your plan, you're good for,
It's a lot of the, so it's a lot of the activities that we're already supporting with county funds. The IG would basically be solidifying that so that it's explicit that this money is for these activities that you're doing. And then the other thing that I would ask of Herb, and I think that would be fine, is I think the plan that we wrote said that we would also do the reporting to DEQ, that we would, not them. The county, and so I would like to shift that and ask Herb to do the reporting and exchange in the IGA, which I don't think would be a big deal because they do so many reports anyway. It's one more form they have to fill out, but they
have all the data.
It's a bigger deal for us.
It's a bigger deal for us than for them,
We'd have to get the data and then fill out the form.
and understand what
And
they're
have somebody
actually
that's
doing.
responsible for it.
Yeah.
And know
Plus
it's gonna
have somebody who
hammer.
actually knows what some of those terms mean.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Herb's folks do that all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that would probably, I mean, I have not run that by Herb, but I think he would probably be open to doing the reporting requirements for us, for DEQ.
Well, it'd be, they would probably love it because for budget purposes and everything, they would know, okay, we have this agreement.
Yeah. The other
Or
thing it
future
does.
boards, I mean, well, you can always change things, but, a little more stability.
Yeah,
I think so, too.
those IGAs,
Something
I think
cut and dry
make
that
sense. Again, I don't want us to get into the habit of doing an IGA for everybody that we fund, but where we are placing expectations on things where we would otherwise, it's the same that we have with like community counseling solutions. None of us are going to be going out and providing mental health services. The state requires us to provide mental health services, and so we contract that and send money to them. And I see SWCD in a similar light now that DEQ is requiring this of us, that we're basically saying to SWCD, you're doing our work for us on our behalf, and so we'll give you funds to compensate you for that time that you value in resources. Thoughts on that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I will pursue that with our legal counsel and with her and get something back on the court's agenda, probably later this spring realistically, because we've got several IGAs that are in process. And other than that, that's all I've got.
Okay.
Nothing else?
I have nothing else.
So announcements, our next regular meeting is February 5th. We also have Tri-County Court next Wednesday, Sherry mentioned, and that's in Sherman County. Frontier Telenet will follow directly after. And I think that's all.
Okay.
All right, anything else? And it's 11 o'clock and I'll adjourn the meeting.
Okay.